thanks again, Type 17, for producing this event. This has been amazing so far. I'm Mike. I'm the community manager at Manufactured, where all we talk about day-to-day is inventory and supply chain. So what we are is that we're an end-to-end inventory solution that helps brands with inventory financing, indoor sourcing, and production. And our goal is to reduce your COGS while increasing your inventory amounts. Thank you very much for being here. If you're being here live, if you're on replay, like, awesome as well. If you are here live, Lisa and I really want to make this as interactive as possible. We would love it if you have questions, if there are things that you would like us to talk about. Lisa has a really, really interesting story. And Experiment is a really interesting story that I'm really excited to share. So Lisa's the CEO of Experiment, which is a science-backed beauty brand which focuses on Gen Z. Give her a follow on TikTok at Lisa Guerrera. This is her handle on TikTok. Lisa, thanks so much for joining me.
I'm good. It's a beautiful day in New York, so can't complain about that.
I hear you. I'm in Philadelphia for Expo East, and it also is a beautiful day. So yeah, it's great. So give us a little bit of a background on Experiment, and as well as your history with TikTok. Did you start posting on TikTok before? Because I know that you're also have an incredible following yourself on TikTok. Did you start on TikTok yourself and then build the brand, or did the brand kind of come first?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we started, so my co-founder and I, we started the brand concept kind of before I really got on TikTok. So this was pre-pandemic, right before. And so I just moved to California. So I was in the Bay Area for a different job I was at. I used to be head of brand at Apostrophe, which is a teledermatology company. And we basically were kind of starting the concept for the brand, just an idea of what we wanted. But no real action had been taken place just yet. And then I started right as the pandemic hit. I, like everybody else, got on TikTok because we were bored. And when I was on TikTok, I just kind of realized there was a lot of, it was not in its infancy, obviously. Plenty of people were on TikTok prior to the pandemic, but as you know, so many more people came on to TikTok, during and after the pandemic. And I just noticed a lot of kind of skincare information was mostly kind of in its infancy. There was a lot of misinformation. There weren't a lot of experts on the platform yet. And I just saw an opportunity to jump on the platform and start creating videos on stuff I knew a lot about, which was beauty science. So my background, for those who don't know, is chemistry. So I have a degree in chemistry. I work in beauty. That's kind of my expertise and what I love to talk about. So myth busting and making videos around that was really how I ended up gaining a following.
That's awesome. That's super cool. So I guess obviously you're kind of myth busting to begin with, and kind of growing your following that way. Can you talk to me a little bit about what, from a product perspective, what went into you then formulating what became Experiment, and how did you introduce then Experiment? I know that seems like you always had the intention of building something when you were starting. It seemed like you were quite deliberate. After you were okay, maybe I'll build a following, or we'll see what happens here. And then, the brand, I definitely want to build a brand because you're kind of debunking what's kind of already out there in beauty, and you want to build your own beauty brand that is, clinically backed and very science oriented. So how did you kind of begin that, and when was the right moment for you that you felt like it made sense to launch Experiment?
Yeah, so, the way we started the brand was really through kind of my past experiences. When I was in college, I wrote my thesis on beauty marketing from a chemist perspective. So kind of the misinformation in beauty marketing, something called chemophobia, which is fear of chemicals among consumers. You'll see this type of marketing in food, beverage, health and wellness. So things, no chemicals, or chemical free, or natural. Those are all considered chemophobic marketing. So I wrote my thesis on that. And then it kind of, brought to light a lot of the issues in the beauty industry that I was seeing from the science perspective. And from there, I, started my first business, which was in tech, beauty ingredient transparency in tech. And I realized cool, I want to start a brand that, is actually transparent with consumers, but does it in a way, but markets itself in a way that isn't boring or sterile or clinical, like we see most like science-backed beauty brands today. So think like The Ordinary or like any kind of doctor style brand. They're all very black and white, pretty sterile looking. And we wanted to create something that was like really fun and exciting. And my co-founder was at Benefit Cosmetics at the time as an R&D chemist. So we both have backgrounds in chemistry. So we had both the expertise to create a brand like that, but also from my background, I did that first startup, then got recruited to Apostrophe to run their brand. I just kind of learned marketing and branding kind of in the streets, rather than kind of anything else. And it was mostly through social media. So, I think, when we started the brand, I didn't intend to kind of build my own audience per se, but the goal was to create like a community before we launched, because I've seen that just be really, really successful with brands when they have kind of a community of people on any social media platform that really love them before they launch anything. And so when I gained a following on TikTok, it was kind of serendipitous because, we were already thinking of creating the brand, and I was thinking, okay, we'll build this following on our brand account, but I ended up kind of blowing up on TikTok and gaining a following that way, which was really, really helpful. And so from there, we were like, okay, this is actually possible that we could potentially launch the brand organically, because I was gaining a lot of followers and then also a lot of influencer friends that come along with it in the industry. So, I ended up becoming friends with a lot of people who make beauty and skincare review content. And I was able to send our first product, Avant Garde, which is a reusable sheet mask, to them for review. And they reviewed it. Like I sent them PR, we didn't do sponsored videos or anything. And so many of them ended up reviewing it, and they all had, hundreds of thousands of followers. I think we had from the people we gifted for our first rounds, 3 million followers, combined.
Wow.
And that was all free. And it's simply because I took basically a year and a half to build relationships with people, build my following. And then obviously through my own following, I was able to, convert a lot of people when we launched the brand.
So I know that's amazing. I know that, prior to before Experiment, you were doing a lot of brand in terms of other social media channels too, not just TikTok. Obviously with Experiment, and as well as, you building an audience, it seemed like you really focus on TikTok, just kind of initially, and maybe that's your main marketing channel. What are some of the unique aspects about TikTok from a social channel that you maybe is quite unique to it, or that you actually maybe enjoy more than other social channels that actually makes it, ideal for Experiment? Obviously with Gen Z, in terms of the audience that you're seeking,
yeah.
Gen Z and TikTok go hand in hand, so I totally get it from an audience perspective. But just overall, there's other elements too from a social media channel that maybe you enjoy, or maybe not enjoy. But would love to hear that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Where do I even begin? TikTok is by far, I would say, my favorite social media platform. And if you ask any entrepreneur who's creating their business online organically and doing well, it's almost always through TikTok. And there's a reason for that. So, TikTok is I try to imagine as how all the memes come from Reddit, that used to be the case. Now all the memes come from Reddit and Twitter. Now all the memes kind of come from Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok. And it's because people are creating true original content on TikTok, also 4chan, but we're not going to talk about 4chan right now. But people create original content on TikTok and are genuinely funny. And the vibe of the platform is very much, open. People post videos of themselves crying on TikTok. People post their weird thoughts. People post so much. And it's really, really free and organic, where Instagram, I would say, as kind of the, main other platform that I think people spend a lot of time on for visual content, is great for inspiration, but not great for growth. And so TikTok has this unique ability to kind of help you grow way faster than you would on Instagram. Instagram is for your friends and for people and in rare cases, you have a lot of followers, but it takes a long time to build them. Whereas TikTok, is primarily pushing your content out to people you don't know. So what I actually love about that platform is you feel like almost how you feel when you're in New York City, right? You're almost like anonymous in a sea of so much, like in a sea of like millions of people, you still feel like private, right? So, TikTok is similar in that vibe because it almost feels like no one's watching you. And so I think great content ends up coming out of that. And it's not that you can't build community, you really can. It's just, it looks a little different and the way you create content is a little different. So I love TikTok for that. But also what I've noticed, and I mean, this is why TikTok Shop, I think, was like a natural kind of extension as TikTok grows, is I trust when people review something on TikTok, I trust it way more than anything I would see on Instagram. I think Instagram has basically, lost its kind of, I mean, I don't know if I ever really had it. It didn't really have a reputation for authenticity, whereas TikTok does. So when someone creates a video trying out our serum or something like that, doesn't matter how they do it, if it's a weird video, if it's like, a poorly executed, like from a quality standpoint, it's not like perfectly polished, basically. But if they're like, dude, what the hell is up with the serum? Like, it was so good. People are going to run and buy it because when they see something on TikTok, it feels like a normal person is using it and trying it and reviewing it versus Instagram feels more like top down. So I guess what I'm trying to say is TikTok feels a bit more peer-to-peer when talking about products. And so you end up trusting it more. So it feels like it's coming from your friends. So I love that as a business owner because it allows us to yes, TikTok is a bit more unpredictable in terms of engagement. And you have to try really hard to make sure your videos are good. But I'd say the reward is really, really high. Like we focus on influencers on TikTok, like gifting our product to influencers. And when they make a video, it works really, really well for us. We don't even have that many followers on TikTok. It's really just about us getting across the platform in different ways through our own content, through other content. And so much so that like now 70% of our customers organically come from TikTok. That's where they find us first. And I think that's a really, really, really important thing to know as a business is like TikTok may be hard to track. It's hard to track the impact, but like if something goes viral, you know it. Like if your sales are going crazy, you're like, let me check TikTok. And it's almost always something from TikTok. Like really.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I love what you said in terms of like some of the key differences in your mind between TikTok and Instagram in terms of like the content itself is more maybe authentic on TikTok in terms of reality. And in terms of like also like top down too, just thinking about like Instagram top down, like it's very reliant on like the social graph. It was built on the social graph, and from like all we know about TikTok, it's not. It's really about how much of that actual piece of content, like just content, not like you as a profile or your profile or how many followers you have. Is that content actually interesting? Do people actually find it engaging? Do people find it interesting?
It's it's like a sorry to interrupt you, but it's kind of like a meritocracy a little bit.
100%, 100%. And I think that then drives more of that organic because it's then not people who you're not going to be seeing your feed all the time, celebrities or influencers or just people that have hundreds of thousands, millions of followings all the time that have built up that and maybe have are producing a lot maybe higher quality in terms of the actual video production videos, where in TikTok you might see in your feed lower quality stuff and be able to discover something new, as you say, like and also, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and also something that John had put in the comments here said best content wins, and I think what's great about TikTok, I feel like Instagram has a definition of what best might look like, whereas TikTok doesn't. TikTok isn't about like best content meaning highest quality or best content meaning best way to sell a product, or like it basically doesn't like make you go to hyper polished to have the best content. Like I think what best looks like on TikTok is so circumstantial and different, and can be low quality, it can be high quality, it can be weird, it can be polished, it can be professional, whatever it is. I think that's what I really particularly like about it because it allows brands to also diversify the way they market, and start getting really creative. Because I find that like the Facebook marketing universe has kind of sucked the creativity out of video content. And there's nothing I hate more than that. I think we should all be going back to like first principles on creativity and doing something different and weird. And I think TikTok allows brands to kind of experiment in that way.
So with all this being said, and that it's a, meritocracy, that, virality is based off of videos, and that, you don't have to already maybe have, it's not really based on like the social graph. And of course, you've had quite a few videos go viral. How do you then think about inventory when it comes to experience? Because I can imagine, like, if you get into a retailer, right? Then the retailer comes to you and says, okay, we want a PO of X amount of units. And it's like, okay, we need to fulfill X amount of units to the retailer. It's very kind of, there's a system to it, right? And I know that, with e-commerce in general, there's not really a simple, like, I would imagine demand planning is really tough to do in e-commerce in general. But even more so, I think, with TikTok, I would presume, because you kind of have no idea in terms of if a video is viral. I mean, I'm sure there's many, I would assume there's many times where you thought like, oh, like that's just like that video is okay, and then it blows up, and a time that you thought a video would do really well, it maybe didn't, and so you don't really quite know. How do you think about this in terms of like from experiments products? How do you think about this from like how much to order to make sure that that you actually don't sell out, which is not great?
Yeah, so we have a very both wonderful problem story, but it's like harrowing when we were going through it. But it was obviously like a positive thing because we went viral. But we have our serum super saturated, which has gone viral on TikTok multiple times, and the product has sold out multiple times, almost exclusively because of TikTok, but especially the second time. So when it sold out, prior to it selling out, we had demand planned our inventory, and it was supposed to last us a few months, right? And we were then putting in a much larger order that we had placed, and we put it far in advance to make sure that we were like good to go as we scaled sales. So when we kind of were going through that inventory, it was pretty stable. We were kind of meeting our predictions until in February. It was right at the end of February, it was the last day of that month. I remember this. We had a free shipping sale, and our sales were just like going crazy that day, but I was in meetings all day and never got a chance to like go and check. And I was like, wow, people love free shipping. We should do this more often. Like, so many people love free shipping. And when I looked at how many people were using the free shipping code, I'm like, that doesn't match up with our sales. And so I then went onto TikTok after it was like 5:30 in the evening. I went onto TikTok, sat down on my couch, and I saw my friend had tagged me in a video, and it would look like a stitch from a video I had seen that done well previously. And I clicked on it, and I literally had to pause the video because I was like, uh-oh, but in a good way, like, uh-oh, like it was one of the biggest makeup creators on TikTok reviewing our serum, dedicated video, and Michaela Nagera. She has like 16 million followers or something, but she's huge. I mean, this was by far the biggest creator that had ever reviewed our product. And I looked and saw that she had bought the product 5 days prior, and she was stitching a video from a influencer that we had gifted quite a while ago, who made a video about the serum that did kind of well, but it wasn't like viral by any means. And she stitched it, and it just went crazy. We sold like almost like a month and a half's worth of inventory in like 72 hours. And so obviously that's amazing, but it's also scary because you're like, uh-oh, the rest of our inventory is not even close to done. And we're like, okay, whatever, we'll ride the wave. We didn't sell out immediately, but then we sold out like 3 weeks later, which was like far sooner than we had planned. And so we were actually 2 months behind on production. And to top it all off, our manufacturer was like giving us the runaround and delayed production another 3 weeks for various reasons, which was very frustrating because we were like, in a jam. And what we did when we sold out is we were still like, obviously with TikTok, you're going to get these like big pops. If something goes viral for maybe like 72 hours, there will be a tail after that, maybe around for like a few weeks. And that tail just means like elevated sales. You might find that like maybe you're making a couple thousand, depending on your sales volume, but like, let's call it like you might be making like 10 to 20% more per day than you might typically, or more per week than you might typically, from one of those viral videos if it's really mega viral. So like this creator that talked about us extremely popular. So it's got like a more visible tail in how elevated our sales were. But basically, you'll see kind of a big pop. And unfortunately, you just kind of can't plan for it, because there are times when, you know, that will happen. She bought the product herself. We had no idea. And she just posted the video. We didn't talk to her. We never talked to her team, never was able to gift her a product. And she did it herself. And there will be times where you can, like, I would say if like you're running an influencer campaign, meaning you're like gifting a lot of influencers, for example. So we gift like there are certain times of the year or around launches where we're gifting like 200, 300 boxes. You know, we're trying to gift regularly every week. If you're really like sticking to that plan and gifting a lot on a regular basis, you can assume videos, like you can start being able to almost predict virality in the sense that over time it will kind of average out, minus these like giant blips, right? So like, you know, this creator, for example, like getting 2 million likes on this video is like, or 2 million views, like that's an abnormal virality. But when I think about like kind of things doing really well, I like to assume like, okay, a couple videos a month, maybe, or one video a month might do really, really well. So much so that it like elevates our sales or something like that. We still have not reached the level where we can really predict that. So it's really just about like averaging it out and making sure they're like, cool, I know I have a strong influencer strategy where I'm gifting you know, X number of creators, and out of those X number of creators, maybe like 1 or 2% are going to do well, are going to like actually sell quite a bit for us. And you have to kind of gain experience from that. But in the beginning, I am not opposed to like selling out for a little, not the long sellout we had, but selling out for a little bit to gain hype and momentum, because then when you restock, that's another TikTok you can make. It's like, this creator sold out our serum and now we're restocking it. And that creates social proof, it creates hype, it creates demand. People get curious, they want to try the product that sold out on TikTok, that went viral. It's almost like viral on TikTok is the new as seen on TV, right? People want that. So, you know, I think it's really, in the beginning, it's almost like don't predict it. Don't try to over predict and try to like get too much inventory, because that's really stressful for your cash. But it's also like, it's okay to sell out just for like a minute. Like, it's okay. Like, people like that. People want to see that. Don't do it all the time, because then you're inconsistent. But in the beginning, I've actually found that we've gained more momentum from selling out and restocking than I think we probably would have gained had we had plenty of inventory and didn't sell out because of these videos.
So how, on the restocking side, which means that, you know, you sold out, so you're like replenishing your inventory and getting your inventory back. How are you then like capturing that restocking sale, or kind of targeting that audience that wanted to buy, weren't able to buy, and so how are you kind of reaching back out to them?
Totally, that's a good question. I think the thing you have to know when you are like really trying to invest in TikTok and like really start gifting a lot of creators trying to basically chase those videos that do really well, you need to make sure that you are prepared for this kind of event. Especially if your product is like starting to gain momentum and people are really giving it great reviews. I feel like it's just a matter of time if you're really putting in the work to like get a viral video. And so that doesn't mean you like inventory plan for that, but it does mean in the beginning, but it does mean that you need to like plan for that in the event that you end up selling out, so that you're not scrambling. And so the way you prepare for that is really through waitlists. That's what we've done. I'm sure there's other methods, but like for us, what we've done is we always link to like the product page that we have, and we keep it simple. Like, we have a very small team. We don't try to do anything fancy. The easiest thing is waitlists. So they go to the PDP, it's sold out. They click, instead of add to cart, it should say join the wait list, and they put in their email and they'll get notified when it's restocked. And that's like the easiest thing. And as you build up that wait list, you can also use that as an advertising tool. So for example, our latest restock for Super Saturated, which is what was that really long sellout period, we were sold out for about, I think, 10 weeks. And so we were constantly promoting the wait list. Yeah. And that's how fast we went through inventory when that video went viral. So it's like, it's not fun, but we've definitely learned from that. But, you know, it almost, you know, things happen for a reason. I actually think it was like, again, it was huge fuel for us, because once we restocked, we had like our biggest day ever. And it was like, it was a crazy, amazing month. So, pros and cons, but basically we've captured 10,000 emails through that wait list. And so now we can say super saturated, 10,000 person wait list. Why? Because it's so amazing. You can make videos off of that. You can promote that. You can talk about that. I mean, it's a huge like social proof point that you can, build up wait lists and like advertise that even before the product restocks. Like you can use that to pitch PR, like pitch, if you're a beauty brand, pitch, different publications that this serum had a 10,000 person waiting list and we tried it. Here's why. Or like this TikTok viral serum had a 10,000 person waiting list. Like those are the kinds of headlines you want to also like try to generate. I'm always like, how do we generate something buzzy? Like, how do we get as many people on this wait list as possible? Like that was my goal over those 10 weeks when we were sold out, is to constantly be getting people on the wait list. Yeah, I would say like to capture people, you really, really, really need a wait list. Make sure that you have their email. I mean, you can do pre-orders if you know when your product will be back very soon. But for us, we had no idea. So we put up a wait list.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's so interesting just thinking about, all the different kind of ways you can sell on e-commerce. Since TikTok, obviously, it's on the actual video itself. And it's, as we talk about, like a meritocracy based off the video. If you sell out, sell out, you always have an opportunity to maybe get back sales once you kind of restock using all the methods that you do that you're talking about. I'm even thinking about it, as opposed to like Amazon, for example. If you're sold out on Amazon, like you might be dead because it's so reliant in terms of where you're actually listed. And so if you get dinged from that, from being sold out, then you might not be on the first page anymore. And that could totally derail your entire business. So you always are, from an inventory planning perspective, you always need to remain in stock. You always need to remain in stock. And it's possible that you might have some dead stock through there, but you need to always be in stock, because if you get, even like, if you're not really in like the top 3 listings or top 4 listings, you have a really tough time in terms of actually surviving as a brand. Where in TikTok, if we're social, like that's not the case.
Yeah, and I think for us, just to be clear, for our strategy, like we are D2C primarily, so we're not on Amazon. So obviously, if you're an Amazon business, maybe my strategy is not one you should employ, right? So, but if you are like basically just D2C, like this definitely can apply, and it just kind of depends on like what sector you're in. But yeah.
Does this, because you get, sold out, it seems like quite a lot. Does this at all make you think about like pricing strategy in terms of trying to get like maybe like better margins in terms of actually like raising prices for your products, or not really at all?
So the good thing with beauty is that it's a great margin business. Fantastic. Yes. Our margins for the serum are already great, and they'll keep improving because like when we first launched it, we had our minimum order was 10,000. So that's how much inventory we purchased for our first launch. We sold out of that. And then our most recent order, I think, was like, I think our second order was like 25,000 units. So like we're going to keep kind of leveling up. And we're almost through that as well. And so, you have to keep leveling up in terms of how much you're purchasing. And so that's going to keep making our margins better and better and better. And even also like our first purchase was like, still when shipping was really, really, really expensive, air shipping. Obviously, our margins have just improved overall as shipping has gone back down. But I don't think we would raise our prices, frankly, because our margins are already really, really rock solid and then getting better as we increase volume. And I think on TikTok specifically, products that have a high value to price ratio. Sorry, someone is like trying to, like at our front door in our apartment. But products that have a high value to price ratio tend to do really, really well. So what that means is just like you're getting a lot of value for it. And I think TikTok is particularly sensitive to that. So, I'm sure in the future we'll look at pricing, but like right now we have no intentions of kind of changing anything. It's actually working quite well.
So I know that, no, I appreciate you sharing that. That's great. How also, we have a couple questions here about gifting for influencers, and also as well, I'm just also curious, how do you even find, the influencers that you want to actually work with that actually make sense for experiment, or, and kind of build those relationships? And then as well, how do you think overall about gifting? Is it like in terms of like your actual week periods, maybe like your cycles?
Yeah. So gifting for us, the way we think about finding people on TikTok, I feel like if you're just starting out, it can be hard, but you have to kind of like train the algorithm to feed you the right people. So it's like twofold. So I usually, in our brand account, you kind of go and start following people in the sector. So like try to find a few influencers, maybe from Instagram, or maybe from another platform like YouTube, or where it's easier. Like just try to find a starting point and start following people on TikTok, and then like their videos, try to find similar people. You can find like other suggested follows. When you follow someone on TikTok, they'll like list like 3 other people you should look at. Go follow them, like follow the chain. If you know your customer, figure out who they're following, survey them, try to figure out who they're following, what are the creators. Like I find, especially again in beauty, if you poll your followers, hey, we're doing a gifting program, and we want to find the best possible creators. Who are the people you guys love following? And they'll give them to you. They will tell you who they are following, because they want to see their creator get experiment products and review them, right? So, that's kind of how you can start. Luckily, like obviously myself being in kind of the influencer space, it's easy for me to kind of pull from that, because I know a lot of people kind of surrounding me, and they are all like influencers that would work for experiment. So we are pretty good at that. But I also have our intern, who's our content intern. She actually, one of her primary jobs is to source people on TikTok. So she goes and finds a bunch of people. Okay, I want all the thrift top girlies, all the girls who are thrifting on TikTok. I want them to get experiment products. Okay, she makes a whole list of all the thrifting influencers on TikTok. She goes through their content. She rates their content. She really is watching everything, pulling out a video that's a good example of something we would like to see from them. Like we go in deep, because creators are like the number one way that we're selling products. Because that 70% number on TikTok is primarily coming through creators, not our own channel. Like, and that's really important to know, is that like, yes, in-house content creation is important. It's very important. But, if you're gifting influencers, like you want to make sure that there's some kind of impact. You might not be able to measure person to person, but you should be able to kind of see that difference of when you're gifting and when you're not. Recently we've taken our foot off the pedal a little bit, because I've been fundraising on influencer, and I've seen the impact of that slowdown. And it's simply because you are just not putting as many products into more influencers' hands, and that inherently will have an impact. Now, the amount of people that we're gifting really varies. So, we aim for like 20 influencers a week that we gift during kind of when we're really like putting pedals to the metal. And that just kind of means like we're trying to ramp up marketing, whether that be for a new launch or, just kind of evergreen. But yeah, like in general, I like to get 15 to 20 influencers a week. And for launches, we like to put together a list of 200 to 250 influencers that we are gifting for that new launch. So for Buffer Jelly, for example, our latest product that we launched, we gifted 215 influencers for the launch. Like, and I'm talking like launch day and like 2 weeks within launch day. So on launch day, we maybe gifted like 150, and then the rest kind of trailed out after that. So it's quite an operation, and that's through like true PR packages. So they're custom mailers with kind of our product in it, information on it. We send them all DMs, emails. Like we are really high touch. And I think it really shows in how taken care of influencers feel, or how noticed or seen. We try to put a personal detail in our messages. We want to make sure they don't feel like they're being reached out to by a bot, which is, I have an influencer email. So for my TikTok account, for where brands can reach out to me, it's kind of nice to be able to see how other brands are reaching out. You would be kind of appalled to see how some brands reach out to influencers. I certainly am. There are very few brands to me that stand out because you can tell there's a single individual who is sending that email. Doesn't mean it has to be a handwritten note every single time, right? But it just means that you know you're not like kind of one of a million influencers that they're reaching out to, and you don't actually matter to them. I think that's really important to make sure that you, when you reach out and when you're gifting, it feels personal.
No, 100%. I think it goes back to kind of having that like organic like love for a brand from an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, try our brand, see what you think of it, and if you like it, obviously, post about it or whatever. But you want to make sure that they actually like the product, because you definitely have like seen like commercials, definitely with like celebrities, where like you can just tell. You can tell.
It comes down to authenticity, and I think again, like with TikTok specifically, like I just want to make sure that like when a person is posting about experiment, if we give to them, they're like, hey, I got this in PR. I want to make sure that who we're gifting, we're intentional with who and why, and thinking that they'll like it. Like we take a pretty like curated approach. We often gift one influencer multiple times. Like we'll be like, if you need a refill, let us know. We're here to help. We want to make sure they stay stocked with product. I find that some brands might be a little stingy with gifting. And look, if it's a really expensive product, totally understand. But if it's kind of an affordable, skincare product, personally, my philosophy is keep your influencer stocked, because when they take a selfie, when they do their routine, what's the biggest like hurdle for them putting your product in? If they don't have it, they're not going to talk about it. So it's important that you stay kind of top of mind, both in their DMs, but also like on their like bathroom shelf, right? If you're a beauty brand, or in their, food cabinet, if you're a food brand, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, 100%. On like the ops side, I know that you recently switched 3PLs just because you had, some issues. Why? Well, talk a little bit about why you switched 3PL. How do you think about like a 3PL partner? And as well as how has this maybe affected your decision when it comes to if you actually should be on TikTok Shop or not be on TikTok Shop?
Yeah, so from that viral video when we sold out and we were, 10 weeks sold out, on that restock day, I think we broke our 3PL, our previous 3PL. So we had been using a 3PL out of North Carolina that was small. It was independently owned. We weren't using kind of any big, 3PL or anything like that. Their prices were good. Honestly, all of our packages got out within 24 hours of ordering. We had really great shipping, but they are small, and we quickly became their biggest customer even before that restock. And when we had that restock, we underpredicted how much we would get that day. And even in our like best case, we like doubled our best case. So like it was really, really unexpected, and it was crazy. And we ended up being 2 weeks delayed on fulfillment. It was that crazy. They had to hire additional people to like fill the gaps to make sure that we could get out. We were like on their case every day. And we just like, that was the moment where we were like, okay, we knew we needed to move soon, but now we need to move like now. Because, this delay was like really, really crazy. And it was also a moment where we were like, oh no, we're letting down our customers because we're taking so long with shipping. And obviously like we were very transparent, and we gave people updates as much as we could, giving updated timelines, things like that. But, it's never fun to have to do that. So, that was the moment we knew we needed to switch 3PLs, and we've since switched 3PLs to a much larger facility. And what we were kind of looking for is better price breaks. We were looking on like volume shipment, and we were looking for kind of more expertise in retail. So, for example, if we're thinking in the next year or two that we're going to go into like beauty retailers, for example, like a Sephora or an Ulta or a Target, we want to make sure that our fulfillment center has experience packing for those retailers, because they have very strict guidelines around how you're supposed to pack your product. So if you want to get into Sephora, you need to make sure that your 3PL knows how to work with Sephora so that your products don't get lost or whatever. And then for our 3PL as well, we wanted to make sure that they could do like special projects for like influencers. Eventually we will get to a point, we actually pack all of our influencer boxes out of our office, and our intern does it. But like can't do that forever, especially as we increase the amount of influencers we're kind of gifting, per launch, for example. So there will come a time where like we want to kit that, at our 3PL, and we want to make sure they have experience doing that. So, that's kind of how we think about it. But, when we think about our next launch, for example, like our 3PL that we had before this, like would not be able to handle it. So there just kind of comes a time where like, if you're starting with a small 3PL, it could be really great in the beginning because it's more high touch. They have like, you're not like their smallest customer. You might be like one of many small customers. So that makes it like actually easier to kind of talk to them in some ways. But the risk is like, if you're going really, really fast and if something goes viral, you can have like, really bad shipping delays if you're dealing with a small 3PL versus a larger one that can handle viral volume, right?
Have you had that experience as well with your manufacturing as you've expanded? Had to switch manufacturers, or on the manufacturing side, it's
no. Luckily, our manufacturer can do high volume, so we're not really worried about that. And actually, we have a pretty close relationship with them. So we are one of the few people who have a very good relationship with their manufacturer. So they're very flexible and they're very helpful.
How also do you think about funding on the inventory side? Do you think when do you think it's appropriate, or how do you think about using cash or equity in terms of payment for inventory versus using debt? I would imagine it makes sense to just from my perspective, it makes sense to use debt if you know that from the inventory cycle you can pay it back really quick and you can actually sell a lot of inventory really quickly. Which I'd imagine one viral video, whoa, amazing! Like we maybe have sold out or what have you. And so maybe that actually gets us like a really low rate on the debt side because we can pay it back really quickly. At the same time, you don't really know when a video is going to go viral versus not viral. How do you think about these things in terms of financing?
Yeah, so I would say, unless you can really predict when that inventory, but like I wouldn't go debt early on. Obviously, like as you grow, everything will become more predictable. In a lot of ways, like you could almost average out. Like, cool, we expect one viral video a month. We're going to expect it to do this, whatever. You could pontificate all day if you have enough data. But like when you're small, like when you're just starting out, like you don't know when that's going to happen. So we've actually only taken on debt once for inventory. And we actually got it through our investor who, so we raised a pre-seed round before we launched. And one of our investors was able to kind of give us a loan to specifically for our inventory because we were selling out, and inventory is very expensive up front. And obviously there's like an 8 to 12-week window of when you're going to actually even be able to start selling that inventory once you place those POs, because you have to put up 50%. And so, we needed to make sure that we weren't putting ourselves in a very bad financial position by using like kind of our cash on hand. So we got a loan to do that. And it was great to get it from our investor because we got super favorable rates. It was really easy. They're like, yeah, we know everything about your company already. Here you go. And and the terms are really favorable. It's just a little bit more lax than dealing with kind of an outside bank or company. Not to say that there aren't rules around it, of course, but it's just a little bit easier because you personally know the people that are giving you that money. So that's number one. And we did that because when we sold out, we were like, oh no, our most popular product is sold out. And that actually really severely affected our revenue. And so we weren't having as much coming in because like our most popular product, which comprises like 70% of our sales, is sold out. So that's not good. So you have to also be able to make sure that you're not using money for inventory that you would need to actually also float yourself through that time. So that's why we got that loan. And we knew when we restocked that we were going to be able to pay it back, and that we could predict, like even in our most like baseline prediction, we would be able to pay back that loan once we restocked. So we just made sure to give ourselves a generous timeline to pay it back. And it was really, really helpful. It actually came in incredibly clutch. We actually like tripled the projection that we thought we would get anyway. So it was fine. We were very, very happy with where we landed.
No, that makes a ton of sense in terms of when to use it. I mean, also, when you're starting out, you're not really probably going to have access to the debt markets as much because you don't really have you
don't
don't
have enough data.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't have much data. It's risky for the debt provider. Also, your rates are bad. I mean, this is a really tough market on the financing side too. You're kind of double hit because you've high the cost to borrow is very, very high, and then also you
very
have.
high.
And also, in terms of valuations on the equity side, they've certainly come down to not what they're used to. So it's very, very difficult when it comes to actually how the best way to actually finance on the inventory side for your business. I mean, I've seen brands that are using equity dollars for inventory because they don't want to pay like the rates for the inventory, even if they have access to those markets. And at the same time, or brands that are using debt mostly for to fund their inventory as opposed to equity. So it's definitely really, really tough too, and this is especially a hard time too. Kudos for you. It's a tough time to fundraise as well. But kudos to you.
Thank you
For doing it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Back to the influencers. There's just one question that I mean, all these questions are great, by the way. One question is, have you ever had a crisis with TikTok with bad reviews? I want to kind of expand upon that question and a little bit. I know there's a trend right now with de-influencers when influencers would actually not recommend products. And I was wanting to know if you ever had a crisis on TikTok with a de-influencer or someone that actually says, "Hey, experiment, not a fan of the brand," and you're like, "Oh no!" It actually maybe it affects. There's your sell-through rate or what have you, or as well a bad review as well. But would love to kind of hear from both perspectives.
I would say that we are very lucky to not actually have that big of a problem, because I think ultimately, it's hard because I'm just our product is really good. We actually don't have a lot of bad reviews. And wow. I think also, on TikTok specifically, we don't have a ton of bad reviews. And I think it's because of fundamentally what our product is and why we made it. So if for those of you who don't know, supersaturated is a 30% glycerin serum, and I'm specifically talking about supersaturated because it's been the one that's been on TikTok the longest and we've had the most kind of data around that. But this stays true for our other products as well. We create really unique products that are very, very effective. So we use science as the backbone for why certain ingredients are in there, or we have clinical testing on all of our products to prove their efficacy. So we come with receipts. Receipts is your guard against people shit talking your product, for lack of a better term. If someone says your product doesn't work, cool. It didn't work for them, but you have receipts to show that it does. You make a video showing the efficacy, showing the clinical studies, showing whatever, blah, 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 blah. You can maybe not directly respond to a bad review because sometimes, that can be a little bit of a dicey strategy, but you can kind of guard yourself against bad reviews through kind of making sure that you come with receipts and that you've done the due diligence on your product to know that it's definitely effective or something. Not to say you shouldn't take any feedback, that's different. But in terms of someone saying it didn't work or whatever, or that it's a scam, or a lot of people like to throw around the word scam a lot, which I'm not a fan of. I think it's people just willy-nilly throwing around scam. It can guard you against some of that. Now, I would say for us, we've had reviews that have said, "Oh, the serum's too sticky," and we actually we turn bugs and turn them into a feature kind of way. We lean into and are very open about kind of the pros and cons of our product. We don't pretend our product is perfect for everyone. And I think that's also been really important because it tees ourselves up where again, bad reviews don't affect us as much because we already said it's going to be a little tacky when it dries down. And if you bought it, then you're going to be okay with it. So it almost people who probably won't like it are less likely to buy it anyway because we are open about kind of who it's for and who might not like it, right? So I think that is really important too, is again, making sure that you're getting the right customers earlier on, because obviously if you're really early and a very bad review, that can really hurt.
That could kill you.
That could kill you. So luckily we haven't had that, but it's also because we almost lean into the kind of perceived negatives or something someone might say is negative. We did have like one dermatologist who gave it like she's like, I love the ingredients, but like the texture is just not for me. It's kind of whatever. And that was like the kind of most lukewarm review we got. But even that review, looking at our post-purchase surveys, they mentioned after they purchased, they mentioned they found our product through her. So like, wow. Regardless,
that was still positive.
Regardless, it was actually so positive. So I think it's because, again, our product was really unique. If we were kind of more similar to other skincare brands, like we weren't as differentiated in both the brand and ingredient story, it's a harder time. You have a harder time coming back from stuff like that. You have a harder time dealing with stuff like that. So luckily, we haven't had any issues with like very bad reviews or anything like that. But I do know that like the whole de-influencing thing, like I will say, can sometimes be, I think it's a net overall positive for society, but I understand if your product gets stuck in that, like that can be kind of, that can be not fun. So I think for me, it almost comes down to like a product philosophy of like, how are you building your product and how are you building your copy and how are you building your marketing to ensure that like, if you're going to get a bad review, it's not going to be as impactful.
I think my biggest takeaway from this, and I thought that was extremely well said, know what you're selling and know who your audience is. You know, exactly. Like ultimately, like if you're selling like what you believe is a great product, you know, first of all, obviously, like if it's a great product, fantastic. Also show in your marketing why it's a great product. And so know what you're selling and know why. John, I believe we're out of time here.
Yeah, guys, this was an amazing session. I learned so much. And, you know, to me, the theme is authenticity. Like when you build an authentic product, you put your heart and soul into it, it comes through. And TikTok's a great medium for that. And the same deal, like the content, it can be raw, but if it's authentic, people really resonate with it. It's a really like just the harmony there between what you're doing and the medium is just amazing.
TikTok authenticity, 100%.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, we got to jump. If you take a minute, Mike, Lisa, thank you so much. Amazing.
Thank you, guys.
John, thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye-bye.